start.
Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome. Today is a funny day because we have some great guests. We're going to have good conversation. So I'm glad you're here. My name is Sasha Orloff. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Puzzle. We're an AI native accounting platform for firms and the startups and the small business that they serve. And so today we have something slightly different. This is an actual real conversation with a real firm that is doing exactly what you're thinking about and what we think you should do. And so over the next 35 minutes, you're going to get to hear directly from the people at Attivo Partners who from the ground up were rethinking how their practice is going to evolve in an AI-powered world and what that actually looks like. And you can ask all the questions you want because we're going to open up for Q&A at the end. And don't forget, we have a raffle for none other than Lululemon gift cards. So keep your eye out on that chat at the end for the winner. So first, I'm going to hand over to Anshul from Brex so he can introduce himself.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. Really excited to co-moderate this conversation with Sasha and in conversation with Greg and John from Attivo, and we'll introduce them here in a second. My name's Anshul. I lead accounting and CFO partnerships here at Brex. If you don't know what Brex does, we're the intelligent finance platform that does everything from banking, corporate cards, expense management, spend management, bill pay, and travel, all on one platform, all for free for companies of all sizes from MVP, earliest of early stages, to IPO, the latest of late stages. We also have the pleasure of working with some of the best integrators, ERP, other vendors in the space, such as Puzzle, where we share thousands of customers, and terrific top of the market accounting firms like Attivo, who you'll have the pleasure of hearing from today. So really excited for Sasha to introduce Greg and Jonathan and us to dive into the conversation.
Oh, well, let's turn it over. Greg, you are the co-founder and partner to Attivo Partners. Let's tell the audience a little bit about Attivo for anybody that doesn't know the firm yet.
Sure. Attivo Partners is a fractional CFO and accounting firm that focuses on venture-backed companies. We service close to or support close to 500 clients in that space, anywhere from pre-revenue to 100 million in revenue. It's lots of fun to be in this space. Watch what's changing in AI, not just in accounting and transaction processing, but also in financial planning and beyond, and how it's impacting the entire technology space. So we're excited to do that again with close to 500 clients and about 200 professionals servicing those clients.
That's awesome. And I'm excited to introduce John, who also has a really cool and unique role, I think, in a world of where we are today, leading technology and innovation at Attivo. So John, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Sasha. So I lead technology, partnerships, and innovation here at Attivo, which means I'm responsible for the operating model behind how we serve our 500 plus venture-backed startups. Practically, that's evaluating the tools, building the vendor partnerships, rebuilding workflows so our team can deliver controller grade work without scaling headcount linearly. So really proud of the Brex puzzle workflow that we're going to be talking about today, because I think it's a very clear path of what changes when systems are actually built to talk to each other. So really excited for this.
This is going to be fun. And so I really also just want to thank you guys for coming on to share the story. You guys have a really, I think, unique perspective and are at a bit of the leading edge of experimenting and playing with it. And so sharing those lessons, I think, is pretty generous. So let's start by just setting the stage. Greg, okay, like what was your firm actually experiencing? Let's talk a little bit about some of the day-to-day friction and what made you decide to start thinking about changes in what types of software are operating that you guys are doing now.
Sure. So, the world of accounting, and I'll say, again, we're fractional accounting and CFO support has changed significantly since we started 8 years ago. And we saw not just, at first we saw automation happening. I'll say maybe that step before AI. And then we saw AI coming into this space and how it was changing, how it was going to change our workflow. And so we said, if we're going to scale our business, support our customers better, we need to understand how to incorporate this technology. And so that's John. You see, John, we've invested heavily in tech and innovation there, and why he's come on board to lead that team. And we stepped back and said, okay, as we scale, as we spend time with our clients, as we think about tech innovation, what are those things that we have to incorporate and do better? And so we looked around and saw tools out there like Puzzle and Brex in terms of how they're coming together. And we said, let's incorporate that into our business. And we can move from transaction processing, which, I'll say as a bookkeeper, people thought of accountants as bookkeepers for many, many years, and have the reliance on AI and the platforms that we're talking about today to create accurate transaction processing so that we could move to advisory. So now we bring more to our clients, more value. We're able to develop stronger partnerships, stronger relationships, and essentially be a trusted advisor, which is, I think, where every accountant/CFO services wants to be. We have tools now through Puzzle, Brex, and others to be that trusted advisor, be a real partner. And so that's what drove us and is driving us to continue to move in this direction and move more deeply in this direction.
Greg, I think you bring up a great point. I think the best firms are moving towards that exact mentality on how firms can be more trusted advisors versus be stuck in the nitty-gritty on the day-to-day. Jonathan, you are in the nitty-gritty on the day-to-day, have worked on a lot of things that are bringing the firm into the future. Can you talk to us about, in a pre-Brex and Puzzle world, what a lot of your workflows look like? What did a month-end close look like for some of your clients? And what did, taking a step back, the previous world look like before you started working with and investing in technology partnerships?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's probably nothing new that the audience is going to hear what I'm going to say, right? So I think um, pre Brex and Puzzle, our senior accountants and accountants were reviewing nearly 100% of transactions manually. So it means our accounting managers were spot checking the reviewers. It was pretty much a chain of manual oversight. And every link was someone just who couldn't afford to spend time on transaction review. So I think that also meant month-end close was a major event, not a process. So whether it is chasing down missing documents or logging into different systems because, okay, like our ledger doesn't have this PDF synced over, it doesn't have this support synced over. Waiting for CSVs, transforming CSVs, and then uploading it into the journal ledger, and then manually fixing coding inconsistencies. So the work was very reactive. Much like if you were using other accounting systems, that's not Puzzle. And I think each tool did its job, but none of them talked, right? So I think that the controls fragmented, the moment your system's fragmented, I think that means multiple approval chains, multiple places, and multiple places for things to break. So I think for us, like volume was the bottleneck, not really complexity. So we didn't really need smarter accountants. We just needed a lot more leverage.
Those are all great points. And so excited to see how you guys went from that world to the world we're at today. So Greg, a lot of people talk about on the company side, AI native versus AI enabled, right? And so in the accounting firm world, I imagine a lot of firms have tried to, for a long time, reinvent the way they do a lot of their processes. Can you tell us, and instead of doing it the right way, they end up with a lot of tech debt, right? And they're not doing it the right way. They're actually throwing themselves down even more. Can you talk to us a little bit about what made you confident that Brex and Puzzle together were the right answer? And at the end of the day, what were you actually evaluating in terms of outcomes versus just the tool themselves?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Anshul. We spent a lot of time evaluating both Brex and Puzzle. And as Sasha and there were many meetings that we had, much back and forth about product roadmaps and where both platforms were headed. and what it meant to be AI native. Because we knew that once we moved in that direction with Brex and Puzzle, that the training involved with that in terms of how to implement those systems, how to set them up, and then let them go, because it is, as John said, a big mindset change to move from 100% reviewing transactions to really what we're seeing and headed towards is reviewing a few exceptions and maybe spot checking. We're still kind of auditors, I'll say, spot checking maybe 5% of the transactions. And so as we made that decision, we said, do we trust the product roadmap for both platforms, Brex and Puzzle? Are they going to be working together and integrating? Because that becomes very important, so that what we see in the Brex, and I'll go back to what you said, Anshul, that this all-in-one platform with banks, cards, invoices, vendor management, expense management, reimbursement management, all very important to how we set up a platform and work with our clients. Then making sure that that can integrate with Puzzle and have those transactions. I'll say have a trusted partner, trusted platforms with those transactions. And so when we spent some time looking at that, came to the conclusion that the investments were going to be right, the team and the partnership between us was going to be very important, and that we could trust what was happening in those platforms. And a lot of it is around trust. Can we get to the 5%? Can we just know that there's going to be certain exceptions? And then on our side, you talk about tech debt. I wouldn't call it tech debt, but we are, and John will probably talk about this a little bit more as well. We're pushing our team to change the way we might have been doing things even 5 years ago. And you have a controller who's been trained for the last 15, 20 years to work with QuickBooks and think about transactions in QuickBooks. And now we present Puzzle and Brex to them. And it's like, oh, I can really become a trusted advisor. I don't need to go through every single transaction. And that's a mindset change that now we're working with our team, so that we can become more efficient, more accurate in terms of working with our clients and going back to that trusted advisor approach. And really, we're responsible for governance or that I'll say the implementation and governance, but not responsible for transactions, because we have a way to trust, let's say 94% of those transactions, and we don't have to go back and check 80% of them or 90% of them like we had in the past. So that's been very important to us.
I think it's a couple things stand out as you're talking. I think one is, for other firms listening, is you get to ride the coattails of some of the hard work that Greg, John, and the team have done to work with companies like Puzzle and Brex. And I think that the other part, I think, to stand out is both of our companies have teams focused on accounting firms. And when you get the combination of two technology providers that are building and taking into account what are the workflows that could exist and should exist for firms, I think you get the ability to push the boundaries forward. And just to bring that tactically, Brex released and created a world-class and the first ever accounting API for spend management in the organization that helps do some of the things that you guys gave us feedback on and said, you guys need to get better here. And I want to make sure that these match the ledger. And there's continued work I'm sure that we will be able to do and improve. But I think that's important. Now, that said, I have a question for John. So, real world accounting doesn't always behave like a clean demo. And so you sort of use this kind of Waymo story. And I think it would be sort of interesting to maybe you sort of talk about the Waymo story and how that relates to the world of AI and automation and accounting.
Yeah. So I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so pretty much in the tech community, AI community, and it's why I bring up the Waymo story, because it's one that I find funny, but it's also a reality check of what happens in the real world, right? So, and it's definitely a story I think about a lot. So, in December of 2025, I'm sure you read the news, San Francisco had a power outage, and all the Waymos paused its services across the city. The Waymos, the self-driving cars just stopped, and it was left in the streets, intersection, total gridlock, right? And it wasn't because the technology failed, um, but it was because the real world stopped being predictable, right? And that's when a responsible system knows when to defer to humans, right? So I think in that situation, like no one could have factored in that it was total gridlock, all of its lights were gone. So I think it really just was a good real world example of what happens um, in real world AI scenarios. And I think that's a lesson for AI and accounting. Um,
Well,
most
let's actually go. Maybe we should bring this to life a little bit more by actually talking about like how does it actually work in practice? Like you got the opportunity to kind of design how the workflow actually works. Maybe you can think about explain how you design that at the firm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really putting guardrails in place, right? So similar to like the Waymo the Waymo process, I would say spend is being captured with context at the source. You know, the ledger gets drafted continuously. I think our senior accountants stop being referees for low risk noise, and then the close becomes review, not recovery. So I think it's really leveraging the integrated systems with Brex and Puzzle to piece it all together. Everything's flowing in real time. We're leaning into Puzzle as kind of first line continuous defense, right? And then we're kind of going in and becoming the review layer and making sure that we're putting our final checks on it to make sure that the financials are going to be what we expect, right? Not a demo environment where everything's perfect, but you know something that's already been polished and refined, the outcome is what we expect it to be.
And so hearing that, Greg, I imagine when you first saw that, that was extremely exciting for you. From a leadership perspective, talk to us a little bit more about, how you felt and envisioned the future of the firm, having led Attivo through many different macro cycles now, how you felt about where the future of the firm could be headed. And maybe you could give us your 2 cents specifically on what Jonathan said earlier, which I think strikes a chord with all of accounting firm operators today, which is how do you non-linearly grow the firm without linearly growing headcount.
Yeah, I mean, what surprised me was as we implemented these platforms and we as we've been focusing, for example, on very early stage companies. So let's say a pre-revenue 10 to 20 person company. How quickly we saw the volume absorbed by these platforms, how we could be so much more efficient in close. I don't want to say closing the books because it was almost as if it was a real-time close. And so processing transactions probably it reduced our time by two-thirds, maybe even four-fifths, if we want to say that. And again, going back to being that trusted advisor, that's where we moved our time and where we're training our team right now is to be a trusted advisor. And it's funny, it was easy to implement the technology. So setting up Puzzle, setting up Brex, and with the integration now is very easy. What's really hard, as I've said earlier, is the when we think about change management, how do you change that mindset of being a person who's looking at 80-90% of the transactions to be somebody who's doing an implementation, focusing on governance and focusing on those exceptions. So reviewing 10% of the transactions or less and going back to that number. And that's really as we're working with our team to say, hey, let's set this up. Let's trust the system. Maybe you need to do a couple audits, but you're going to see that it works, and it has worked. I mean, Puzzle and Brex together have worked great for us in terms of processing those transactions. And so, we make the investment in that setup. We make sure we set up the right guardrails, make sure it's working, and then it's done. We let that company grow, or they grow, and we grow with them from the standpoint of making sure we have the right continue to have the right guardrails in place, and making updates as that company becomes a bit more complex. That's nice because of the flexibility that both Brex and Puzzle have in doing that as our clients scale. And what that means is that we can keep the same number of people, because if we reduce the amount of time that we're spending with the client looking at transactions, spend more time as a trusted advisor, though, we can scale our clients much more quickly without adding more costs necessarily to our team.
And then if we could click one level deeper, you gave some really great hard number examples there, but is there anything else that you'd like to point out about the direction a firm can head in? But it's not only firms, but also business outcomes specifically for the clients you're working with, whether it be on revenue, whether it be on headcount, whether it be on capacity, any other kind of tangible numbers wise business outcomes that you want to point out without giving your secret sauce away.
Mhm. Well, I think one of our values is data-driven decision making. And if I were to go back 8 years, a lot of time when we started the business, a lot of times that data to make a data-driven decision might take 10 days, 15 days to get a month end and make a decision based on a month end close. With the technology that we have today, with the AI implementation that we have today, those same data-driven decisions are happening almost real time. And so if somebody comes to us and says they want to have an official close done in a day or two, we can meet those requirements. If they want to have certain metrics mid-month at a certain point in time and begin making decisions mid-month based on the AI native platforms that they've implemented, we can provide that information to them, and those metrics are available to them. There's confidence in the numbers that we're presenting, both from our standpoint as a trusted advisor, and the client themselves has confidence in those numbers because they know that, I'll say it's an 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 accountant, a financial strategist is sitting around, has set up these systems correctly, and is providing real time numbers that they can trust.
So I think this gets to a point of kind of culture change, which I think you touched on a little bit, which is the way that we did things yesterday might not help achieve the goals that we need to tomorrow. And so implementing technology is relatively easy. At least with Puzzle Brex, you just raise your hand and I guarantee we will have a team on board wanting to help you set up and get successful. But it's a little bit of there is a mentality change to go from I'm doing everything to more of strategic oversight. Now, of course, the platform helps you optimize that time to like where there's places. But like, how do you, John? You're in charge of the operating model. Sort of like, what does that look like for your team, like on a day-to-day basis? And how do you kind of work through that cultural change, that conversation with your team?
Yeah, I mean, so day to day, it definitely changes, right? So our accountants are interpreting financials, not really producing them anymore. So they're spending the hours that they used to spend on like reconciliations and instead focus on burn analysis, runway scenarios, vendor decisions, and ultimately spend strategy. I think that's the work our clients actually want to pay for, right? So, and it actually means the role just got more interesting. It's not really in a threatening way. I think the skills that matter now is designing the guardrails, reading the exceptions, and signing off on the output. So really more senior level work, right? Not less. So it's up leveling. So we're shifting, and to your point, it's a huge shift, right? So from transaction processing mentality to strategic oversight, and I think that's hard. It's changing the core foundation of what we've done. But I will also say it's probably doing a lot of things that we didn't enjoy doing anyways in the past. The puzzle is just automating a lot of that. And it does mean we get to do more of the fun stuff. Like I definitely enjoy interacting with their clients more, with their founders. And I would say, with the puzzle, Brex, and just the continuous closed nature, I would say like it allows our founders, it gives them more confidence. They can access the financials whenever they want. They can leverage the various puzzle AI features to kind of drill down. So we're really empowering them with their financials. And I've actually watched like founders just pick up the phone or just work with like pick up the phone on investor call, pull up puzzle, and kind of walk through like cash runway. Talk about like 3-month burn all live without breaking strides because puzzle just makes it that easy. They want to know burn, they want to know cash, like click away. And puzzle makes that possible. And they're not constantly waiting on legacy accountants to kind of feed them the information 3 weeks, 2, 3 weeks after close. It's all happening in real time. It's just changing just how we interact with the clients, how we deliver service, what our day-to-day looks like. It's no longer just, oh yeah, let me book this transaction.
Oh, I think your
Yeah.
name is definitely in contention for that Lululemon card now with that comment. That was off script, but I appreciate it. Greg, if I turn over effectively a similar question to you. So we get the benefit of John's perspective, like designing kind of the day-to-day kind of operating model of how these things work. I'm sure there's this other mentality from where you sit across the firm. You have a big firm with lots of clients. That emotional sort of spectrum can be overwhelmed, skeptical about AI, maybe not even wanting to change. Like if you've been using a similar software and a similar process for a while, on a day-to-day basis, you might not see some of these big kind of macro trends. For firm leaders in the room, like who might be anywhere from like, I want to use it, I'm ready, just like I need that first step, to like I'm kind of skeptical. Where do you start that conversation? What do you tell them?
Um, I would start by agreeing that transformation can be hard. And so that's something we talk about on a very regular basis at our firm, and say, as we implement these tools, transformation is going to be hard. But you have to start somewhere. And once you begin, you get to the opportunity to learn. You have the opportunity uh, to then take that learning and bring that out to the rest to your company and say, here's how we're going to be thinking about learning. And you take little steps. And so as we, for example, were implementing Puzzle and Brex, we said we're going to take a segment of our clients and put them on. This is going to be a perfect fit for Puzzle and Brex. Then we said that we didn't know it was going to be perfect, but it wound up being very, very close to perfect as we can get. And what did we learn from that? And then how do we carry that beyond that? And so it's one client, a segment of clients that you begin with. We proved that model, and now it's expanded significantly beyond that. And we've said, to our team, we've said that if we have this type of client, every client like that is going to go on to Puzzle. It's just like it's easy to use. I want to go back to what John said. It's built with the founder in mind. Even though you need accountants to make sure that you put the governance in, it's built with the founder in mind in terms of access and dashboards and metrics. And so it really becomes Puzzle is kind of a partner to us. And then you don't want to try and get perfection all at once. Take the time to learn, take the time to transform, and it's really just begin. And the ROI will show up at some point in time as it relates to capacity planning and supporting your clients. I mean, I know some of our clients will be listening to this, but your margins begin to improve. You have your clients reaching out to you for different types of services and supports as a result, because you've become that trusted advisor, and those deepening client relationships are very important to us in terms of not just to particular clients, but how we expand our business as well.
And Greg, you did a great job summarizing what client outcomes look like. And you talked a lot about how do you step your feet into and dip your toes into actually getting started with a lot of these AI transformations. Final question maybe, and then we can open up for Q&A. Jonathan, how do you tactically envision what a modern accounting firm looks like 3 to 5 years from now? What does an AI native accounting firm look like 3 to 5 years from now? And how do you suggest the folks that are listening on the call that are run accounting firms can be on the right side of this transformation?
Yeah. The firms that adopt AI into their operating model now will have a structural advantage in 3 years, not just on speed, but on the quality of the insights that they offer. So the accounting firms of the future is going to be human-led, AI-powered, where accountants operate as architects and AI is the engine behind it all. And that sounds like a big feat. So I think, as Greg mentioned, start small. We're not seeking perfection. So I would say start with the workflow. Pick one area, whether it's close, transaction categorizations, or account reconciliations, and rebuild it with governed automation. So invest in your team's ability to design guardrails and review outputs. That's ultimately going to be the skill that matters in 3 years. Just like the whole Waymo story, when the lights go out, speed stops mattering, control does. So build for the control first.
I want to remind everybody that we'll be moving over to Q&A, so there are some questions rolling in, and I would encourage everybody to continue to ask. I'm going to start by looking at these two and kind of combining them together, or maybe sequencing them between John and Greg. Maybe you guys can sort of think of this. So I think one of the things that you mentioned was wanting to create this kind of high touch client experience, and automation can kind of help out with some things, but not with others. So maybe describe, what do you view as a really good client experience today, like a high touch client experience? And how do you balance that with some of the things that just naturally take time, such as like accruals and outstanding clearing accounts, or AP or AR? How do you balance those two things together, at least today, and where should it go into the future?
Would you like to start with that,
Yeah,
Jonathan?
I can take this one. I mean, I think it's really leveraging the modules that are in Puzzle, right? So things with like prepaids. Like if you're still booking manual journal entries to take care of prepaids, that's a thing of the past in Puzzle, right? So it's actively coming through, via transactions or Brex feeds. I mean, it's automatically building those amortization schedules. Same thing with fixed asset and many other schedules, right? So it really solves the accrual-based financial statements, even at a day one close. And I think balancing that out with all the others, it's really understanding kind of uh, what we want to leverage in Puzzle for automation, understanding, and more so picking the correct tech stack for automation, right? And maybe that's the right balancing act. So, if part of your tech stack, has more of an incumbent system, maybe it's time to consider Brex to consolidate everything, right? And that ultimately is going to give you the speed, allow you to better balance kind of, the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things.
And I
Greg,
may
anything?
just add, I was going to say, Jonathan talked about Brex on say this, the expense spend side, but there's also tools on the revenue side that allow you to do that just as quickly. And so where there's concerns about the length of a close process, or maybe even, I don't know, I'll put in quotes, a real-time close during the course of a month, having the right tools and platforms in place is critical in terms of what you can do at a given point in time as you go through your monthly accounting cadence.
We have a
I
great. Go ahead,
Oh,
Sasha.
no, no, please.
I was saying we have a great question here. Kind of peeling one of the layers of the onion back. Um, we talked about, and the team at Attivo talked about a 1 to 2 day close. Um, this person wants to know, is this more from a standpoint of having AR and AP complete versus a full gap close? For example, not having to deep dive into specific transactions. When or how are reconciliations complete? Are they mostly post-close? Question mark. Most of our time closing is spent doing recons around clearing accounts, sales audits, debt, leases, and flex analysis. When you say 1 to 2 day close, what does that actually include? And Jonathan, maybe you want to tackle this first.
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned, the one day close is made possible when you have the right tech stack. A good example that we probably, all have touched at one point in time before is like Stripe reconciliations, right? I think total game changer in Puzzle is doing daily postings, daily patients, daily everything, right? So on a monthly basis, I'm not really running reconciliations. My team isn't running, transaction reconciliations. It's looking at the puzzle report, looking at kind of anything that's unreconciled, and kind of doing the remaining 5-10% of work to kind of make sure everything's fully reconciled, right? So like I would say like it's it's choosing the right systems to cut down on a lot of those manual reconciliation work. So as I mentioned, like prepaids, fixed asset, there's many other schedules that Puzzle help automate, as well as like the more complex accounts like payroll. Making sure that you have a good integrated payroll solution is going to mean no manual journal entries, things are clearing out correctly, and there's not a lot of work besides just making sure you're agreeing with everything that's being done within the system.
I, I I'm gonna probably butcher one of these questions, but I'm gonna maybe try and combine these two into something that goes back to how do you design a workflow in a modern world? And I'm gonna set the stage a little bit for this. So I think that one of the questions that a lot of firms ask us about is how do you get your clients to choose a modern stack? And I'm going to answer from a technology perspective is um, that there's only so much that technology can and ever will be able to do. But I just want to paint like a really clear picture that we hear almost on a daily basis. So there are people that decide that they or clients, their clients that are on traditional institutions, and those might or might not have different levels of API access that are built for accountants or not built for accountants. And so one of the things that we worked really closely with Brex for years was about making sure that the accountant permissions had read-only access to the systems, and that consolidating everything not only just gave you richer feeds. So instead of just getting the transaction, the title, the amount, there's also what are the memos that people are putting into Brex? What are the receipts? Are there bank statements? They built the first ever bank statement API in the system, so we can pull that information in. Now it's you do have the benefit of reliability. So there are benefits. People have to make a choice. Do you consolidate everything on Brex and you get these extra benefits around accounting automation plus all the great benefits of Brex versus maybe clients are on a traditional stack that might have unreliable APIs that feed limited level of information. How do you have that conversation? And we get to the point is like, how accurate is Puzzle? I think the question to some degree has an impact on that conversation you have with your clients about choosing whether you want to have more data and more automation versus having manual. How do you approach that conversation with your clients about the choices of the tech stack that they make? And what do you view your role as an accountant in, or that trust advisor in that conversation?
I would say maybe we're in a less than typical mix, but I would say our approach, we engage with our clients as a trust advisor. We, place a huge value on building our partnerships and just building our client relationships. So in return, I I and many of our other team members would likely agree, like we don't have that much resistance with change. We're typically focused on outcome, not decisions and making to get the outcome, right? So the outcome is, what do you want? Do you want visibility, real-time visibility into your finances? Do you want to know more about your metrics, right? And it's focusing on that outcome. That's driving a lot of the technology changes, right? So like they don't want to, they already have a million things to decide for the business. They're focused on building and scaling the company. It's not about choosing the right expense management solution or the AP solution, right? Because of how we work with our clients, they look to us for guidance, right? We're helping them center around the outcomes that they want, and then we're building the tech stack that allows them to achieve it. And maybe it's not necessarily having the conversation about, do you use tool one or tool two? It's what outcome do you want, right? How do you want to build the business, and what do you want to focus your priorities on?
I really like that. I was a little nervous asking, so I was like, oh, this is like Q&A, live Q&A always gets kind of fun. And I want to have the right answer for firms. But I think that when you're able to bring the conversation to what are the outcomes, it allows you to be that, trusted advisor. What is the outcome you're looking for? There's always choices that we're making across everything we do. But to deliver that conversation. I get that one of the parts, when is the right time for a firm to have that conversation? Is it, there's probably two sets of clients. There's a brand new client that's coming in and evaluating you as part of the sales process in what they might be doing. And then there's like, you have an existing book. Like you said, you have hundreds of clients, some of which are in different levels. How is there a difference, or how or when do you recommend, in your experience, bringing up the conversation about the tech stack?
Yeah, I think it depends, right? So if it's an existing client, the tech stack just comes naturally. And it comes naturally because I would say, hopefully none of my clients are listening on this, but it's more so like almost being a therapist or just being their, for lack of better words, trusted advisor, right? Like, if you're not asking how your founders are feeling, what's keeping them up at night, like you're probably not doing enough to service your clients, right? And that's typically, how we transform the technology, how we build and scale with them. You know, are you ready for a sales tax solution? Have you reached Nexus? Like how are you thinking about all this? Do you need, additional fundraising, debt financing, whatever, right? So that's kind of a natural segue into slowly evolving and changing the tech stack. And maybe for a new client, you can still adopt a similar story, right? Ask them how they're feeling, what keeps them up at night, do they feel confident with the board, and you'll really understand why aren't they confident? Is it because of lack of financial information, lack of flow? Do they feel like they need to wait 24, 48 hours before they can understand why a certain GL account went up? So I think it's kind of, again, listening. I would say that like that's probably the biggest thing I do with our clients and founders is listen, and then listen some more, and then just come back with an option or two.
I
And it's
think that's a
amazing
great.
how
Yeah.
much change I can get done just from and then giving them a
Yeah.
solution.
I love that,
Yeah.
Jonathan. I think that's a great segue into a question which I think is top of mind, like for everyone, from a vendor perspective, but also a firm operator perspective, but also a founder perspective, is that we've talked about automation, automation, automation. How do you continue to grow without hiring more people? At the end of the day, when you're delivering accounting services, you are in the services industry, and the very bane of the services industry of their existence is that you work with people and you're in services and you interact face to face. And so, Greg, maybe you can touch on how do you balance that automation while also maintaining a very high touch client management, client experience overall?
Excuse me, from our standpoint at Attivo, it comes through the team members that we hire. And those are team members that want to interact with the client, help them interpret the data. And it goes back to that value of data-driven decision making. And so the automation, the AI and automation that we're implementing is to get to a point where we get some data, we get some analysis around the data, and then we work with our client in terms of that value added trusted advisor approach. And it has required us to do a couple things. One, look at the type of people that and team members that we're bringing onto the team that really have that mindset, that want to be a trusted advisor, not just sit behind, their general ledger, but it's somebody who's upfront, wants to interact with our clients. And two, um, we're restructuring at the same time how we deliver our services. And so that there's a core set of features and functionality that we offer as I'll call a managed service. And then there's a set of services that we offer outside that are those trusted advisor services. And so, as we approach it, we have this AI and automation approach that is essentially a product, if you want to call it that is built on platforms like Puzzle and Brex. And then we have the trusted advisor approach that is built around the time that we spend with our clients, helping them interpret their data and make decisions. And so that's how we've come to that approach to become a trusted advisor. It's like we've got this. I'll go back. We build our services around the platforms that you have developed, Sasha and Anshul, and then we have uh, I'll say our professional development, our services as a trusted advisor that we provide to our clients.
I know there's a lot of questions, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them. And so what I'll say sort of generally is some of the more tactical questions about how should you consolidate spend management and what are the benefits of doing that on Brex. The Brex's team is available. Some of the more tactical questions about some accrual automation or cash automation. How does the platform work? You can book a demo with Puzzle on puzzle.io, or I'm sure we will send you a follow-up and drop some links into the chat. I know somebody from our team is going to announce some of the winners for the gift cards here, but for everybody listening live or streaming or watching this video, I can't thank you guys enough, Greg and John. You're sharing the types of insights that I know a lot of firms are thinking about right now. And so I just really appreciate you guys being really generous with your time and talking about how you made decisions, how some of the things are coming into reality. So thank you. And just wanted to thank you guys for coming. It's been great. I appreciate it.
I want to also echo a lot of Sasha's sentiments, and thank everyone for joining us today. You could be doing a lot with your Wednesday morning or afternoon, depending on where you're based, but you chose to spend it with us and hear a little bit more about what the present, past, and future of accounting looks like. The four of us spend a lot of time thinking about what is today and what can be tomorrow and building towards that future. And so we appreciate that. We'll send a follow-up and, as a thank you. And then this webinar will also be available on Earmark for CPE certified points and hours. And so thank you for joining us, and we look forward to doing this again soon with you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, John.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Anshul.